Okay, so welcome to the MBA information session. We're really happy to have you on board. My name is Pannell. I'm an Associate Professor of Management here at ACAP, and I'm the course leader of the MBA program. So in tonight's session, I'll be taking you through a little bit about ACAP and about our MBA, and just making sure that we've got all of your questions covered so that you've got all the information you need to make a decision as to whether or not you want to go ahead and study an MBA with us. Thank you, Nina. Next slide would be awesome. So before we start, in the spirit of reconciliation, ACAP acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. All right, so in today's session, we're going to learn a little bit about ACAP. We're going to talk about the MBA program, and as mentioned, there'll be an opportunity for some Q&A. And for those of you who are live, you can see that Ravina has also given you a welcome via the chat function. So feel free to pop your questions in there and she can answer them directly, and I'll also keep an eye on that chat function as we go. All right, so an overview of ACAP. We're now 40 years old. We've been delivering our courses since 1983. We have colleges and campuses all around Australia, as well as the online campus. And as you know, the MBA is a fully online course. We have a lot of live interaction with that. So it's not just you on your own, listening to boring lectures. There's lots of live interaction, but we have been offering psychology, counselling, coaching, business, management, law, social work courses with over 20,000 graduates over the last 40 years. So one of the things we wanted to say really right at the outset in this presentation is that one of the things we pride at ACAP is our focus on diversity and inclusion, and this real emphasis on students feeling that they can bring their whole selves to ACAP. We want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable, respected, and certainly safe. And if you're interested, you can see that link for more, or literally just Google the word ACAP and diversity and inclusion. You can see a lot more of our approach to that. So I guess the question is, why would those 20,000 students choose to study at ACAP? And one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is that although the courses are online, there's a lot of interaction. We make sure that the learning is very personalised. You get to know your educator. We don't call them lecturers anymore because they actually don't do lectures. It's much more kind of what I would call more of a dialogue, a two-way conversation, really tapping into your own knowledge and expertise and bringing that into the conversation. So working on case-based learning, live issues that are happening in the world at the moment, and then translating that into the learning that you might be doing. So for example, the students this trimester, a lot of them are doing a unit on corporate governance and understanding the issues and responsibilities for a board of directors of a company, and looking at things like data breaches, for example. Just when we started the unit, there was a whole issue with the Optus data breach. So really bringing those live cases into the learning as we go along. The other thing that I think is really important with the ACAP educators is that they all have industry expertise as well as their academic credentials. And we really do focus that the course is based on applied learning. So you're not learning some kind of abstract theory. You're learning things that you can actually take away and apply in a business setting straight away. And that also applies to our assessment tasks, that the assessment tasks are the kinds of things that you would do in a business environment, present to a board of directors or argue a point for a particular budgetary adjustment, or use some financial data to aid the decision you're going to make on an investment around a startup and that kind of thing. So you really are learning those applied business skills as you go through each of the assessment tasks throughout the course. And I can talk through that in a bit more detail when we get a bit more granular about the course. So the other thing is that it's quite a flexible enrolment option. So our next intake is the week starting the 29th of May. That's our trimester 2, week 1. And you can decide to do maybe 1 unit in that trimester, and then the next trimester you might do a couple or even 3 units if you've got some time off work. And you can change your enrolment. So with those 3 different trimesters a year to whatever is suiting you in your workload and your work-life balance as well. And like most universities and colleges, we also offer the Australian government fee help, where you can defer your loan via a government-based loan. Defer your fee via a government-based loan. The other thing that I think is a really important part of ACAP, and I've worked now at least 6 different universities in my career, is the amount of support that students get at ACAP is really quite substantial. And we do get a lot of students coming to, say, an MBA program that might have done undergraduate study like 20, even 30 years ago. And so therefore haven't actually even read or written an essay topic for, that amount of time. And so we have a student learning support team who can, we have live workshops, we have recorded workshops, but particularly we also have one-on-one sessions with people from that team, which can be really helpful if you need help in, thinking through how to argue your point in an assignment. And we have a lot of additional support for students who might have different learning needs or accessibility needs, and all students are able to receive free confidential counselling. So in addition to the diversity and inclusion approach to ACAP, we really do whatever we can to make sure, as I always say to students, tell me what support you need to help you in your studies. And that is a really, I think, a real strength of ACAP's. So very briefly, just a little bit about me. I'm an associate professor of coaching and actually management, and I have developed the graduate certificate of applied coaching course that feeds into our MBA program. So we've had over a couple of hundred students go through that, and it's a leadership-based coaching program. And so you'll see also as we go through the MBA in a bit more detail, there really is a focus on helping you to fine tune and hone those leadership skills that are going to be what really keeps you ahead of the game in your career, particularly with the impact of all the different technologies, artificial intelligence and digitization that's coming down the pipe. So I've worked with many people over lots of years, and hopefully bring that depth of experience to the MBA program, really understanding what are the business drivers, what are the skills and attributes that people need in business to succeed, particularly as businesses are changing so rapidly. And my own research is really looking at the nexus between what's happening with artificial intelligence technology and the kind of skills and thinking that's required of today and tomorrow's leaders. So hopefully that ends up generating some interesting discussions that we might have within the class environment. So just briefly wanted to also give you an outline as to the kinds of students that you are likely to be studying with if you decide to join us. We've had again, over a couple of hundred students actually go through at least one of our units, and of course, many more. We've got a really solid cohort that are going through and systematically chipping away at all the different units to complete the MBA. They'll be complete next year. And the students are saying things like, really great educators. The MBA content is really fantastic. It's super helpful in my career, and so on. So we get people from, say, HR backgrounds, from management backgrounds that are looking for an MBA that has that real humanistic and leadership approach. We also have built into the MBA, you will learn the basics of how to use coaching as a leadership skill. And that's another thing that we've had the students really give us some really great feedback on. So, I guess the question comes back to why would you consider coming to us in general, but also why an ACAP MBA? And so our expertise at ACAP has been in psychology and what I would call applied psychology, so business-based psychology or psychology in the workplace. Which is really about understanding how other people tick, understanding people's drivers, understanding people's behaviors, influence, motivation, high levels of productivity and output, performance, and so on. And so that applied psychology piece is built into the first 2 units of our MBA course, and it kind of ends up being a theme that that weaves its way through the rest of the course, which is really helping you to be a very savvy business leader because you understand people. And then, as I mentioned, that the way that we've written the curriculum is to make sure that it's really cutting edge, that it's very case-based, very applied-based, and very using examples and situations that are very prevalent in today's current market. The other thing is that we don't have any attendance requirements in our MBA. So although we encourage you to come to the live classes, they're 90 minutes each week at the end of the day. So about 6 o'clock Sydney time, we have a 90-minute class. It'll be a different night of the week, depending on what unit you choose to do. And we actually don't insist that you come to those. We really encourage you because then you get that interaction with other people. But the classes are all recorded, so if you've got a really busy week at the time, you can jump in and listen to those recordings. And then all of the content that we ask that you go through is actually in our online student database, and you go through that in your own time, including all of the reading that you might do. So you don't need to go and buy textbooks. It's all in our as e-copies in our library. So as I mentioned, we really want to make sure that this MBA fits into the business drivers of the current landscape. And so, some research that's come out just recently is looking at the future work is really about leveraging human potential. So, there's all this talk about what, say, ChatGPT can do, but, an interesting question is what ChatGPT can't do. And it really still can't. It might happen in our lifetime, but it still can't actually replicate a human in terms of our ability to build relationships and to have conversations and to tune into people and, to really understand what's going on and to influence and to strategize and, to think outside the box and those kinds of things. So, the research is showing that the top skills in management for 2025 is certainly around that analytical thinking, innovative and critical thinking, but the leadership and the social influence, the ability to have that level of emotional intelligence, complex problem solving, and then, as we've all known now from going through COVID, that ability to be resilient, to manage our stress, and develop that sense of flexibility. And then on top of all of that, we're expected to be creative and original and innovative and create new markets and all sorts of things. So I think there's a real demand on today's leaders, and it's in some ways it's a lot of pressure. I do a lot of executive coaching work, and there's a lot of pressure on leaders to be more than they currently are in terms of the way that they used to manage in the past is no longer enough, where the standard is now a lot higher in terms of what we need to be able to navigate and think through, and the complex people issues, whether it's internally within an organization, working in a global company, mergers and acquisitions and so on. They all involve people, sometimes involve dealing with very difficult people. And so having that ability to, really develop those leadership skills, I think is a really important part of an MBA. So as we said, in terms of the MBA in general, we really do want it to be globally relevant with a focus on giving you the skills that you need to lead and succeed in today's work and business. And as part of that is really thinking about what are the skills that you need to actually land the next dream job. Ultimately, most people do an MBA to get either promoted internally or to be able to get another job elsewhere. And as part of our program, we also offer you that career support and mentoring so that you can have those conversations about where you're at with your career and what you need to really set yourself up for success in the future. So another thing we emphasize is that our class sizes are quite small, so your voice is heard, and you also are able to build some really great relationships with other people in your cohort, and that as I said, the educators all bring that extensive academic experience, and that you can immediately apply what you're doing in a work environment. So another element that I think is important is that ability to be able to manage and solve complex problems. And so that's really linked into that ability, sharpening your decision-making ability. And as part of that, of course, as part of any MBA is really understanding the financial implications of a business situation. So you can include the financial aspect in decision-making. And we find that often MBA students might be quite good at project management and at, understanding marketing and maybe even relatively good as a leader, but it's often the financial piece that can trip people up. And so in this course, you're learning not necessarily how to do the number crunching yourself, the financial mathematics, because that tends to be a role that is for experts, but it's actually how to make decisions using financial data. And then the unit that we're offering for the first time this coming trimester is also the ability to make decisions using digital data. With now all of this technology, we're getting exposed to huge amounts of data, whether it's about consumer trends or even internal data about productivity or operational data and so on. And it becomes overwhelming for managers in terms of how they might navigate that. And so this next unit, the digital transformations unit that we're running, gives you those key kind of ability to think through and manage the complex issues around big data. The other thing that we offer that we're really excited about as part of this MBA is what we're calling our high impact leadership program. So this idea of, knowing yourself, developing your own self-awareness to grow and expand, who you are and who you can be. And just, like having a personal trainer is kind of metaphor. The high impact leadership program, you are part of a group coaching session with other members of your cohort, working with an executive coach who's helping you to fine tune your skills, and you're receiving that one-on-one coaching, as well as part of this program, which is on the next slide, please, Nina. We have industry specific, the bottom point, we have industry specific mentors who will work with you towards the end of your MBA program to give you the kind of guidance that you need to really fine tune the project that you'd work on at the end of your MBA that might end up actually landing you a dream job. So this is part of our capstone element, which is towards the end of the MBA. You work very closely with, say you're in health, so it'll be with a health-based mentor on developing potentially a solution to a challenge that you found in the workplace, and then potentially even marketing that to an organization or internally to open some doors in your own career. So as part of that, you can see the three tiers to a high impact leadership program. I've touched on each of them, but there's the leadership coaching that's a real core of your experience. There's the career support that I've mentioned, and then the industry specific mentoring that you get. So very much this sort of approach of nurturing your learning. So you're not just learning content, you're not just plowing through assignments, you're actually really focusing on yourself and fine tuning and honing your own abilities as you go. So very briefly, just the course structure, and I've nearly finished my points, so really happy to open up for some questions as we go along. But the way that the course works, like most masters, there's at the very beginning, stage one, there's the 4 units that make up the graduate certificate of business admin, and then the next 4 units are the graduate diploma. And then the final 3 units make up the MBA, and there's only 3 because the capstone is worth a double. So it works out to be equivalent to 4 units and 4 units and 4 units. You can dip in and out to most of those. It's only the 3 master's level units that have prerequisites. So if you've got an undergraduate degree, you can actually, choose which order you do this, your study in, and you could actually even start your training with us by doing the digital transformations unit that we're running next trimester. I'll take you through what we're offering in this coming trimester in a minute. But the other thing around this course structure, as I mentioned earlier, is it's really up to you as to how quickly you go through this, as in you might do 2 units one trimester and then 3 another, or you might just chip away one at a time depending on your own workload. And then the other thing, I guess, is to have a chat to Ravina, who's our course advisor, who's live online, just to see if there's an option for you to get credit, or what we normally would call recognition of prior learning, for any other postgraduate study that you might have done that ends up to be an equivalent, or otherwise, even your own work expertise. So say you've got a background in finance or marketing, there is a possibility that you could actually get credit for that finance unit or that marketing unit. So that means that you could then skip that, you save some money and you save some time. So talk to Ravina about that credit pathway as well, because it really does make the MBA a lot faster for you to be able to progress through leveraging your work expertise. So just going back to the previous slide, please, Nina, who is the course for? So the kind of students that study with us are, and sort of linked in with that next slide, which I'm about to go through, that people need to have at least 3 to 5 years management experience. And so we often get people, certainly, as I mentioned, wanting to either get promoted or get a better job. But also there will be people in the course that have more of an entrepreneurial bent, that are looking at maybe, someone mentioned just recently to me, doing a side hustle, or starting up a company on the side and really wanting to learn the business skills to make their side hustle work. And we get people that are working more in a consulting capacity, that might want to have those MBA skills and really understand the business drivers that are behind the work that they do. So that links into the next slide, which is the entry requirements is either an undergraduate degree and 3 to 5 years of work experience, because this is a postgraduate study, or now the Australian government has actually opened this up for all Australians, that if you don't have an undergraduate degree, we can count if you've had at least 5 years of professional or managerial work experience, and that creates an entry pathway into postgraduate study. So you can talk to Ravina about that pathway. So that means that your work experience, basically, the government sees that as equivalent to an undergraduate degree. So what we mean by 5 years experience is 5 years, say, leading and managing other people. It's not just 5 years in the workplace. The only thing with those of you who might enter via that pathway is that it might mean that you haven't written an academic essay either, for a very long time, or maybe even never before. And so any student entering via that pathway, I really encourage you to reach out to our student learning support team once you enroll, and make sure that you have some one-on-one time with them, so you understand just the process of writing academic essays, which is slightly different to, say, a business report, although some of our assignments, as I mentioned, are actually business reports. But to just be aware that if you don't have that undergraduate degree under your belt, or it's been a very long time since you've written an essay, really good to reach out to our student learning support team for that. So as I mentioned, the other advantage in the way that we have this flexible enrolment is that you basically just pay per unit. And so if you're enrolling in one unit, you pay for that unit. You don't have to pay for the whole MBA up front. As I mentioned, we do have the government fee help option, and you can talk to Ravina, who's online live, to find out if you're eligible. It's basically, if I think you're Australian citizen, and there's something about New Zealand citizens, but I can't remember the details. So I'll clarify, get Ravina to clarify that. You can also check out our fees page for more details. So what we're going to be offering in 2023 T2, as I mentioned, the first week 1 is the 29th of May. We have those first 4 units in that list there are the graduate certificate level units. So we have a unit on leadership, on developing yourself as a leader, and those classes are Wednesday starting at 6 p.m. So those time zones are Sydney time zone. Project management is another fantastic unit. Students absolutely rave about this unit, where you're learning how to manage projects, and I think it's a skill that every business manager really needs to have. Leading people and change kind of pivots more, not as much about yourself and your own leadership attributes. It's more, how do you lead and guide other people? How do you performance manage them? How do you get HR involved if you need to? What are some of the legal and ethical implications of leading other people? So that's a really interesting unit. And then, as mentioned, that financial decision making, where you're learning how to understand the basics of business finance so that you can incorporate that in your decision making and in your strategic reports, and being able to read the annual reports of publicly listed companies, for example, and understand what's going to make a profitable company or merger or a business decision or not, because you understand those finance basics. And then the unit that we're offering at the graduate diploma level, as I mentioned, is this final one, which is on Monday evenings. It's digital transformations and business systems. So really understanding the thinking required to navigate the impact of artificial intelligence, digitization, big data, automation, machine learning, all that kind of stuff. So really interesting unit. We've got a lot of case studies in there as well. So we're confident that by the end of that unit, you'll really have much more of a sense of, what do you do with the technology now, but particularly what is the kind of thinking and strategic thinking required for you to be able to navigate the impact of technology as it continues to impact businesses exponentially. And I can see there that Ravina has added to the chat a little bit more about the fee help. So I think that's almost everything I needed to cover. Is there